Hi, it's Mayor Walter Sendzik, and welcome back to our home with Mayor Sendzik. It has been a couple of weeks since we've been on air, but I would like to welcome you all back. It's April. Easter is just around the corner. The bunnies are hopping around. Spring has finally sprung in our community. It was a bit of a long winter, and when you get out into the parks and the trails and you get to see people who are riding their bikes, they're walking with their dogs, they're going for runs, it's great to see that activity out in our community. So I hope you're enjoying this new season of spring. And today's episode, we'll be talking about our museum and some of the new interpretive plans that are being developed as well. Later in the show, we're going to be talking to two members of STC team that are working on the city guide and some of the activities that are taking place across the city in spring and summer. So it's a St. Catharines filled show. I know you're going to enjoy it. And to start off, we have from the St. Catharines Museum, Kathleen Powell, who is joining us. She is the Supervisor of Historical Services, Acting Supervisor of Cultural Services, and Curator of the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Center in Morningstar Mill. That is a mouthful, and I think we've got to get that title down a little bit and give you a great new title, because you have been doing a wonderful job at the museum, Kathleen. And for those who don't, I hope those who are watching have been to the museum. It is over on Lock 3 on Canal Road.
Welland Canals Parkway.
Welland Canals Parkway. And it's part of the viewing as well. You can go there, you can see the ships as they climb the locks. And as well, it is the home of our museum. Kathleen has a degree in history from Brock University, as well as a certificate in museum studies from the Ontario Museum Association, and has been working in museums and historic sites in Niagara for over 20 years. She's a lifelong resident. I'm just going to keep going for a minute here, Kathleen. Fun fact is she's working on her master's in history at Brock University, and the topic is Niagara and the Boer War. So it's just it's wonderful to see an individual who's so immersed in the history of our communities, because I firmly believe that our identity is so much connected to where we've come from. And it's not just and this is as a historian myself, a student of history, it's not just the history of the leaders of community or those who have achieved something significant. It's the history of the neighborhoods. It's the history of the peoples that really make up a community. And so it's great to have you on the show. And I just want to start with a quick question about the role that you play at the museum itself.
My particular job?
Give your particular job.
Okay, so I'm responsible for the staff, making sure that everything runs smoothly and that we have staff and that we have resources to do the projects that we want to do. And then I'm also responsible for kind of working with my team to come up with what the plan is for our exhibits. And some of the exhibits I curate, do the research, do the writing, and work with this team to put together the exhibits. And then others I work with the team to develop them, and then the team puts them together. We do educational programming, and we support a lot of volunteers, and just support all of the visitors that come to the center as well, because it's a pretty busy place once the canal is back open again.
So let's share that, because I think people would be impressed with the numbers that come through. So what are some of the numbers of visitors that come through those doors?
Generally, we have been averaging for the last 5 years around 100,000 visitors.
100,000 visitors
at the museum and Welland Canal Center.
And how are they getting? Can you tell us where they're coming from? Do you have data on that?
We have a little bit of information. It's kind of half and half local people and half visitors that come from that are coming from the United States. We have a lot of bus groups that come, and most of them are coming from southern United States, that kind of thing.
I do see a lot of buses during the summertime. You come in there, and they come in and they explore the museum. They also go and look at the ships as they're coming through. And the interesting thing is, you touched on volunteers. April is Volunteer Appreciation Month. So what are the roles of the volunteers, and how can someone get involved if they want to volunteer at the museum?
We have a couple of different options for volunteering. You can volunteer doing work with our collection, with the artifact collection.
That's where you get to wear the white gloves.
Right, white gloves. You get to handle some old stuff. And
fun fact, I used to do that.
Oh, really?
Long time ago.
That's awesome. And then there's also volunteers that do a public programming type work, school programming, group tours, stand on the platform and talk to visitors about ships in the canal and that kind of thing. And then collections people basically are cataloging our collection, photographing the collection, doing research through the microfilm of the newspaper, that kind of thing.
And you teach the volunteers, like so if,
Yeah.
you know, someone who's interested in saying, I want to get involved, I've got some free time, you actually come in and you're able to teach them on how to do the proper cataloging and collection.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually a pretty intense kind of training process to learn that. So it is great if you're looking to kind of break into that work. It's also a great spot to do some volunteer work and to get some experience on that.
So I know as someone who's gone to the museum on a fairly regular basis, the volunteers act as ambassadors, and so anyone with a disposition that they really like to talk to people and they're very welcoming. It would be wonderful to have more folks come out who want to be a part of the museum and be a part of really showcasing our city in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a little family at the museum, and it's nice to add more people to our family.
So in terms of the growth of the museum and the future direction of it, one of the programs or plans you're working on is the interpretive plan.
Yep.
So explain what an interpretive plan would be to an individual who may not be familiar with the museum.
Sure. An interpretive plan is basically a plan that kind of maps out how we tell all of the stories that we want to tell in our facility. So not just what's happening in the museum gallery, but also how we take the stories we want to tell into the rest of the public spaces as well. So changing up how we provide signage in our lobby, what kind of signage do we have on the viewing platform and in the park to kind of help people to orient themselves to where they are and what it is they're going to see throughout the entire building. And then the main focus of the plan is to help us to figure out how we're going to tell the stories in our gallery. The museum exhibits have been there, most of them have been there since the 1990s when the museum opened. And so it's time to have a little bit of a refresh and take a look at whether or not there's stories we're not telling, we should be telling, stories that we could be telling in a different way, what should we keep, and then and whether or not we should kind of change the layout of the gallery to tell the stories in a more seamless way.
So I guess give some perspective as to what you've learned from other museums and how are you bringing them into the St. Catharines Museum? Because I know you travel and I know you get to interact with a lot of other museum-oriented individuals. So what's something in this interpretive plan? What are some of the new ideas that are coming forward?
I think the thing that I always take from other museums and that I think has come out in this interpretive plan is how to use exhibits in a way that resonates with the people that are going to look at them. So lots of times we hear that people want technology. Everybody wants tech and high tech, virtual reality and all of those kinds of things. But does it work? When you go to other museums, you can actually see if these ideas that are kind of pie in the sky actually work in reality and when there's lots of visitors trying to use them all at the same time. And so I have learned some lessons from that kind of visiting things. And then I'm almost spoiled to go to museums now. I always just want to see how they've put things on display and that kind of thing. And so we do learn a lot. I learned a lot going to other museums from that perspective.
Well, you had I think a very impactful display that had captured the history of World War I as we were marking the 100th anniversary of a number of significant battles from World War I, Vimy Ridge, and a lot of them that culminated in the final victory. So, and that was an impressive undertaking. It wasn't easy. There's a lot of work that went into it. How many years would go into a staging something like that?
That particular exhibit with all of the research and then the development of it took about 2 years.
So that's what the public doesn't see.
together.
It's 2 years of production, I'll say. And there's a cost associated with it.
Yep, that was a major exhibit. Most of our smaller exhibits that we change up regularly, we do them within the year.
Okay.
But that one was the major one, and it can be expensive to put exhibits together.
And I have to say that the compliments that were received by members of the community who had gone in, it was very impactful. It captured the locality of the war and how it had an impact on St. Catharines, and I think it was very well served for our community. It was a wonderful commemoration of those who had experienced the greatest sacrifice of their life in order to protect our freedom. So thank you for doing that. And now what is the next major exhibit that's there?
The exhibit that's currently in that space is featuring the Spanish flu.
So give an idea of why did you choose that one? What was the impact on that one?
Part of the reason we chose it is because it's 100 years since the Spanish flu outbreak in 1918 and 1919. And so I wanted to kind of connect the 100 years of the First World War with what came afterwards.
Right.
And more people died from the Spanish flu worldwide than died from the war.
Right.
And so I think, we put a lot of emphasis on what happened in the World War, but then there's almost no emphasis placed on what happened afterwards too. A lot of guys that went over to fight died from the Spanish flu before they got home.
Right.
And so I think it was just a story that it was great to tell.
Wonderful. Now, what I really enjoy about the museum, and I compliment you and your team, Kathleen, is you've brought new ideas to how to interact with the museum and people. And so can you touch on a couple of programs that you've developed over the last little while that you're bringing more people in, or you're bringing the museum out to people?
Sure. Right now we have a couple going on. One is a program called Chew on This, which is in the downtown in 5 restaurants in the downtown. There's a little booklet that sits at the table, kind of like those little menu booklets that sit on your table, and they're just historic images from our collection.
Wow.
With no information. If you want the information, you have to go to the blog to read about what's in the photo, but we're encouraging people who are sitting waiting for their food to come, take a look at these pictures. They all have different themes, each one of these booklets, so if you visited all the restaurants together, you would see all of the themes. And to kind of reminisce, have you ever been to this place? What's going on in the picture? What's it telling you about the history of our city? And just to chat about it. It's kind of like a conversation starter.
And you have Friday nights at the museum?
We did, but we're not doing that this year.
Okay, so that was one of that you got people more involved.
We are open late on Tuesday nights.
Tuesday nights?
Starting Victoria Day to Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And so that's nice to have us open later than normal business hours for people who can't make it during the weekdays.
Yep.
And then we are going to be starting back our book club, later on in the year.
So all that information is on the website?
Everything's on our website, yeah.
So in terms of website, because we're just going to wrap into this, you also have a digital platform. So you've launched a digital part of the museum, and that can be accessed from the website?
Yeah, it can be accessed from our collections page. There's a tab that's called Collections on our website, and the link is to eMuseum. And basically right now it's featuring roughly 20,000 artifacts that have been cataloged and digitized from our collection and the information related to them. And as we continue to catalog the collection and add information to it, every day or every couple of days it refreshes and anything new gets added. It's really exciting. A lot of people have been saying for years to me, I want to know more about all that stuff you've got in the basement, and this is kind of a way for people to see it without, we can't put everything on display all the time, and so it's a good way for people to see it without having it on display.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I honestly think the St. Catharines Museum is one of the most forward-thinking and interactive museums that I've seen, and I can tell that you're bringing new ideas to the community on a regular basis. You're really putting the museum on the map, which makes me proud as someone from St. Catharines. So I want to say thank you to you and your team. And for those who are looking to find out more about the museum, you can go to the museum's website, and it's St. Catharines...
stcatharinesmuseum.ca.
stcatharinesmuseum.ca, and you can look at the eMuseum, which is just another way to explore the history of St. Catharines. So I encourage you, as you're out and about, you're on the Welland Canal Parkway, you're either riding your bike or you're walking or you're going for a ride, stop into the museum, explore our history. It's about who we are, it's about our identity, and you'll walk away with an even better understanding, not just of the history of St. Catharines, but how fascinating the museum is here in our community. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have Scott Rosts and Karen Doyle, who are going to be talking about some of the other things that are going on in the city of St. Catharines. So stay tuned. Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. We were talking with Kathleen Powell about our museum, and now we have two more of the STC staff here. Karen Doyle, who is joining us from our Economic Development Tourism Department, and Scott Rosts, who is joining us from our Communications Department. Karen is the Tourism Marketing Officer for the City of St. Catharines. She has spent 15 years of her career working in radio as a director of marketing and promotions. And after living away for 10 years, she decided it was time to come home, which is awesome, and spend the next 4 years in the gaming industry as the advertising manager with Niagara Casinos. For the past 4 years, Karen has been part of the economic development and tourism team at St. Catharines, and she is going to be promoting our new 2019 City Guide, which just dropped. It's a wonderful guide that highlights a lot of things that are going on in the city, and so we're going to talk to Karen about this, and then we're also going to be talking with Scott. He is going to be talking about a new program that we have, and it's called Engage STC, as well as some of the other communications that we're working on at the City of St. Catharines. He's new to the city. His title is Corporate Communications Officer. That's a fancy title, Scott. And he spent 17 years in journalism in the Niagara region. And those of you who are familiar with Niagara this week, Scott Scotty is one that has really created a voice for following those who are following local issues. He had that strong voice, and he's brought that level of communications to the City of St. Catharines, and we're proud to have you on the team. So we're going to get into the City Guide before we go over to Scott. And when I say Scotty, it's because Scotty's been on the show before, so has Karen. Last time Karen was on the show, her phone went off. She was using new technology. And I wasn't used to the fact that people had phones that their phone would actually start to ring.
I wasn't either. That's why I did.
So it's good to, the first thing we said is turn your watch off.
Yeah, this is for looks only, aesthetics only.
So we just dropped the City Guide, and for those who may not have known about the City Guide or have seen the City Guide, why do we do a promotional piece like that? What's the reach? What's the audience? What is the intention of it?
The intention of it is to share with people who live locally and outside of the Niagara region all that there is to do in St. Catharines. We are a four-season destination. There's always something to do, whether it be the Grape and Wine Festival or some of our great downtown programming at the Meridian Center and Performing Arts Center, to our outdoor activities. So it's just an opportunity to share with people what they can do in the city while they're planning a trip here, or if they're looking for things to do over the weekend as somebody who lives in St. Catharines or the Niagara region.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a bit, because a lot of folks would say Tourism St. Catharines. We're in the shadow of Niagara Falls, and we often get overlooked. Yet, how important is tourism to the City of St. Catharines?
It's extremely important, and I think the fact that we are down the road from Niagara Falls is a great thing for us. We're in a beautiful area. We have a lot of rich culture and history in St. Catharines with the Welland Canal Center, our connection to the Underground Railroad. We have some terrific festivals. We are sort of the anchor of festivals in the Niagara region, and I think that what we have to offer people as either an extension of a visit that they're already doing within Niagara or just a day in St. Catharines is definitely worth exploring, especially if you're an outdoor person. Between all of our parks and our waterfront trail, Lakeside Park, the Carousel, Malcolmson Eco Park, the Canal Trail, there's lots of great things to do that cost very little that a whole family can enjoy.
Right. So I agree with you. Mm-hmm. And while often we are in the shadow of Niagara Falls, sports tourism plays an interesting role in our community.
Absolutely.
So in your role as tourism manager, talk a bit about the sports side, because I think maybe those who no longer have kids that are in the house, that have grown up, are looking and going, what would sports tourism mean to a community like ours?
Sports tourism in St. Catharines is a very large driver, especially for our accommodation partner. We're lucky in that we have some groups in the city that go after the bigger events like the Scotties and the Briar and FIBA. And of course, the tourism department in the city supports those bids. But from a sports tourism perspective, we offer a sports tourism grant that encourages groups to come and host their events in the city. And as long as they meet some small mandates as far as accommodations and things like that, we're happy to help offset some of the costs for groups that want to come in.
Well, it's interesting. The Club Roma, they have a really big Tiamo Fest, I think it's called. They have 270 soccer teams.
Wow.
So when you talk about tourism and sports tourism, what that looks like, just in that, how many families come outside of the city to play in that tournament. And then you look at the hockey tournaments that take place at the 4-pad, and you look at the basketball tournaments that come in. The OBAs were in our community a couple of weeks ago, and they were in all of our high schools and elementary. Harriet Tubman has become, which is a midtown school, has become a destination for a lot of sport basketball teams who come in, and then they play their tournament. So those are all new dollars that come into the community.
They're strong, consistent economic drivers and important to us.
So if I'm new to the city, I'm a tourist, I come in, what are 5 things that you would want to, 5 things you want to highlight to the tourist?
Well, I'm a North End girl, so I'm going to say Waterfront Trail, which connects you from Lakeside Park to Sunset Beach, which is great. And all along that path, you can walk, you can cycle, you can swim along the way. The Welland Canal Center, of course, because
We just heard all about that from Kathleen. Yeah.
and I don't think people realize how amazing it is to watch a ship come into the lock. I mean, there's inches on either side. It's a pretty cool experience. The museum, of course. That's two. Niagara Wine Festival, that's a staple. The parade, the Fall Festival, the Ice Wine Festival, which is very unique to Niagara. A great way to spend a weekend. That's 4. Craft beer and wineries. Let's say that.
Okay. Ale Trail.
Ale Trail, yeah. And even if you're not a consumer of either of those two things, there's often a terrific view from any of those venues and a great lunch.
I'm really putting you on the spot because you've got one more.
Oh, one more. Oh, downtown. How
There you
could I
go.
miss downtown?
It's right behind you.
There's so much to do downtown now. I mean, it's so great to drive downtown through on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock and the streets are packed. It's great.
Well, we got Foster Festival. We got In the Soil. You have the Ice Dogs, which attract
River
people come to our
Lions,
community. You got the River Lions. You just have so much
The market.
going on. Market brings people into our community. So it really is a community that can attract a lot of people. We got Brock University students. They're tourists as well. They come in. There's 19,000 of them exploring our city in all the different ways. So the city guide is an important tool. Is it also available online?
It's available online. We print 50,000 copies.
Yep.
Most of them leave the Niagara area and go out probably within a 3 to 5 mile drive radius of what we're looking at. And the rest are available throughout the Niagara region and, of course, online.
Well, I remember last year we had at the Meridian Center Cirque du Soleil, and they were there for, I believe, a 5-day run. And the amount of visitors from outside of not just Ontario, but they were from the eastern seaboard. I sat beside a couple from Russia who were visiting Niagara Falls, and they heard about Cirque du Soleil and they came. So you even got the Meridian Center, which is activating a lot of that tourism elements. You talked about the Scotties that brought a lot of people into our community. So we are a destination for a lot of folks, and we are part of Niagara, one of the biggest brands in the world, supported by Niagara Falls. So thank you for the work that you're doing. We're going to switch over to Engage STC. Scott, you're on you're in the hot seat. So we're talking about a new platform that your communications department recently launched. Tell us a bit about Engage STC, because this is a new tool that we want people to discover.
It is. It's so the website that people can go to is www.engagestc.ca. And really, it's an extension of the community engagement that we do at the traditional things, your public meetings, your open houses. This gives, though, audiences who can't make it out to those meetings. We know people can't make it out, or you get the same people out at, engaged at certain meetings. This provides them a different forum to provide their feedback. I think the city has always done well at going above and beyond as well. Whether it's letting people know about work on a road in their community. So this now gives them another way to reach residents, and it offers tools from surveys to collecting ideas to just even sharing updates to those who are interested in projects.
Okay, so I'm sitting at home and Engage STC. What would be an issue that would drive me to this program?
Yeah, so one of our most successful to date has been the arena strategy.
Okay.
And that's actually, we had, I think, 500 people complete the survey there. And we're actually going to post some updates because the draft strategy is going to be unveiled. So those who were engaged, we'll let them know again that there's an opportunity to do that. We've done Sunset Beach, the vision for the park or the space there. We're just recently launching the engagement on private property tree bylaw. So it really is a scope. The museum interpretive plan, I know Kathleen Powell was very excited about the engagement she saw there. And it was from a different demographic. And that's the key is you've now broadened the horizons to anybody who wants to have a say on an issue.
So it's almost like a virtual open house or public forum where traditionally we think people go into a town hall, they'll go to the Optimist or they'll go to the Lions Club and there will be 15, 20 people there and we're explaining what's going on in a certain part of the city. This is a tool where you don't have to leave your house, but you still get to participate in making sure your voice is heard.
It's all at your fingertips. You know, people do need to register, but we've allowed them to register with their own username so they can feel comfortable providing their honest thoughts and opinions. And the feedback we've seen has been fantastic in terms of, you know, what people are saying and, you know, their thoughts and opinions. It's been constructive.
And it's called Engage STC.
Correct.
So really it's for the public, it's about engagement. What I really like about this program is we're reaching out to the people and saying you can have an impact on what we're doing in the city, and it's not the traditional go to a place. It's fill out this survey or read this document and provide some information back.
And it is a one-stop shop. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, you know, you can put the staff reports. We try to create FAQs. Not everybody can read a staff report.
Right.
So our team likes to kind of put the key points, and it helps people, I think, maybe understand some of the issues better, and then hopefully they feel more comfortable sharing that input.
So it's interesting from an engagement standpoint. We have a lot of different channels that we use. For those who are looking to get more information about the City of St. Catharines, I encourage you to use the Twitter. Use Twitter feed. We have City of St. Catharines has a very robust Twitter feed, as well as Parks and Rec now has. I think the museum has a Twitter page or Twitter account. In addition to that, there's also the city's Facebook page is a great source for information. You can register at Engage STC to make sure you get more information there. I'm just going to quickly touch on Pink Street.
Yep.
It's on your handheld app or your handheld mobile device. It's an app that you download, and I'm going to give you 15 seconds to describe it.
Free download, allows residents to report issues to city staff, from parks to road conditions to snow conditions. Basically puts contacts at your fingertips if you want to contact the mayor's office or councilors. It is great because alerts, it'll send you if there's water issues,
Yeah, road
closures, facility closures, and all people have to do is look up Pink Street. And I do have to say, we just launched a new Instagram account too,
There you
so
go.
at City of St. Catharines, and we're just looking at all kinds of ways to engage the community.
Well, I think our communications team is doing a robust job making sure that our residents are informed about what's going on in our city. And from a tourism perspective, Karen, you're actually creating an opportunity for those beyond the City of St. Catharines to learn about all the amazing things that are taking place here in the City of St. Catharines. So I hope you have enjoyed the show. It's been a very informative show, from museums to city guides to different ways of communicating with the City of St. Catharines. You really get a sense that there is a lot going on in St. Catharines, and as we head through April and into May, continue to get out there, explore all the things, and when you get an opportunity, you can look for this guide and discover or rediscover all the amazing things that are going on in the City of St. Catharines. So until next time, have a safe and happy time through the City of St. Catharines. Take care.